It's almost fall, and while many people love fall with its colorful leaves and pumpkin spice lattes, fall is actually a pretty stressful time for high school seniors because the college applications process is, of course, about to begin. For the first time, you don't know what you'll be doing next year, and that uncertainty can be really intimidating. If you're feeling overwhelmed by all of your college application to-dos, that's totally normal. And we're here to tell you that everything will be okay as long as you take things step by step. To help make things a little bit easier, we've put together an 8-item checklist so that you feel on top of the college applications process. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Number 1, narrow down your school list. The first thing to do is to finalize your school list and make sure it's well balanced. This is really, really important because it's the most foundational step to your entire applications process. But unfortunately, it's often where students go wrong. So let's chat and make sure you don't make those mistakes. You want to make sure that your list is balanced among reach, target, and safety schools. A reach school is a school where your odds of getting in aren't very good. A target school is where you have a good, decent chance of acceptance. And a safety school is where you have a very high chance of acceptance. All of these classifications are based on the selectivity of the school, your personal profile, and the average profile of accepted students to the school. If you want more info on these different types of schools, reach, target, and safety, you can check out our How to Make Your Perfect School List video, which is linked below. A common mistake is that students create top-heavy lists that are mostly, or even worse, all, reach schools. This decreases your overall chance of acceptance to college at all because you're statistically unlikely to get into most or even all of your schools. For a more balanced school list, we recommend including between 2 and 4 reach schools, 3 to 4 target schools, and 2 to 4 safety schools for a total of 8 to 12 schools. You can apply to more colleges if you want, but remember that each one costs between $50 and $100 to submit the application, unless you have a fee waiver, and that it'll also cost you time and emotional energy to submit more and more applications. If you're having trouble paring down your school list, you should first figure out which schools check off the most boxes in terms of your fit factors. These fit factors could be anything such as location, size, majors, specific clubs, financial aid generosity, many things. You just need to decide which factors are negotiable and which ones aren't, and you should just remove the ones that don't meet the cut. By this point, you should have a shorter school list. If it's still too long, you should take a look at the supplemental essays required by each school. If you groan at seeing all the prompts because you think it's going to take a long time, it's going to be too much work, you should really reconsider whether you really want to attend the school or not. Writing college essays isn't most people's idea of fun, but if you truly feel that the school is a good fit, you're more willing to put in the work. Number 2, decide if you're applying early action or early decision. Now that you have your school list, you'll want to decide if you're going to apply early action, EA, or early decision, ED. On these timelines, you'll have to submit your application earlier, but you'll also get a decision earlier. Most early deadlines are November 1st instead of the January 1st regular decision, RD, deadline, and you'll get a decision by mid-December for early instead of March or April for regular. While early action isn't binding, early decision is binding. If you get in an ED, you'll have to attend the school. You have no choice, unless financial aid is insufficient. You can also only pick one school to apply to ED, which makes the weight of that choice even more significant. There is one other application timeline called Single Choice Early Action, SCEA, which is characteristic of schools like Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. For SCEA, your application isn't binding, but you can only apply early to one private school, hence the name Single Choice Early Action. You might be wondering why anyone would intentionally give themselves an earlier deadline for this hectic process, even if they hear back earlier. Well, applying early is actually super appealing to most students because early acceptance rates are actually significantly higher than regular decision acceptance rates. For example, Harvard's early action acceptance rate was 13.4% for the class of 2023, but their regular decision rate was 2.3%, for an overall acceptance rate of 4.5%. 2.3 versus 13.4 is a pretty huge difference when you're trying to get into Harvard. It was once believed that the higher early acceptance rates were due to a stronger pool of applicants amongst the students applying early. However, we at College Mind have found that if you control for profile strength, there is still a benefit to applying early. Early decision applicants get the highest boost, between 10 and 12%. For single choice early action, the benefit is about 6 to 8%, and for normal early action, the boost hovers around 4 to 6%. So, in sum, applying early can be a really smart strategic step as long as you take the time to prepare the best application you can. Number 3, register for any last-minute testing. Now that you have your school list and your admissions timeline set, You should be sure to double check your school's testing requirements. Most schools require the SAT or the ACT, but some more selective ones will also require, or at least recommend, SAT subject tests, which are hour-long exams covering a specific subject such as math or US history. If your school requires subject tests but you haven't taken any yet, you don't need to panic. You can take multiple subject tests on the same day, the same Saturday, which allows you to fulfill any requirements in just one test sitting on one day. Some schools will tell you which subject test to take, but others will leave it totally up to you. Generally, you should take the test that is most relevant to the subject you want to study for your college major. So if you want to be a STEM major, for instance, you want to take the Math 2 test. Beyond that, you should take whichever test you think you'll do the best on. We usually discourage students, however, from taking the language exams because actually many native speakers of those languages take the tests and they make the curve a lot harder for the rest of us. For more about SAT subject tests and which ones you should take, check out our blog series on the topic where we break it down for specific majors. Regardless of which test you have to take, even if it's taking the SAT or ACT for the first time or retaking it, make sure you schedule a date that allows you to get your score in time for your application deadlines. So for early action or early decision deadlines, you'll want to take your test by October at the latest. For regular decision, you should be aiming to take all of your tests by December at the latest. Number 4, ask your teachers and counselor for recommendation letters. If you haven't asked your teacher or counselor for a letter of recommendation yet, you should be sure to do so at least 1 month before your first college application deadline. You should try to ask teachers in 2 different disciplines, such as one STEM teacher and one humanities teacher. If you can, you should ask teachers who you've had recently and those who know you outside of the classroom as well. For example, an ideal option would be a math teacher from your junior year who was also your cross-country coach, so they know you both in and out of the classroom. It isn't always possible to check all of those boxes, so just keep in mind that the main goal is to ask teachers who know you well and can speak positively of you and your academic abilities and your personal qualities. You generally want to ask teachers whose classes you aced, but you might consider asking a teacher whose class was challenging because they can also make a strong recommendation. You just want to make sure that you persevered and ultimately overcame the challenges you had in that class. Keep in mind that some teachers may ask you to provide them with a brag sheet, or basically a resume of your extracurriculars and any honors you've won. Your school counselor will also likely ask for one to write your recommendation, so it's good to have that ready in your back pocket. Number 5, tackle the Common App. There are 2 major beasts when it comes to the Common App. The essay, of course, but also the activities list. Most students know that they need to spend a good portion of their time writing an engaging and unique college essay, but many high schoolers don't realize how important the extracurricular section of the Common Application is. For selective schools, your extracurriculars are really just as important as your essays. So as you're filling out your activities list, you want to be sure to follow these steps. Number 1, ask yourself if you've listed all of your significant extracurriculars and if all of the extracurriculars you listed are significant. The most competitive applicants list between 8 to 10 activities, but it's better to have fewer ECs that truly matter to your high school development, rather than many ECs that distract from your overarching high school career. For example, if you played basketball for all 4 years and you were a varsity captain of the team, and you write an essay about how basketball taught you the importance of determination, you should definitely list basketball on your activities list. But if you only did a robotics club for 1 semester and you don't show any other interest in STEM on your application, you might consider leaving that one off. Number 2, check that your activities are listed from most to least significant. On the flip side, list any titles within each activity from least to most significant, rather than in chronological order. For example, let's say that you were class president in your sophomore year, but then you were just a class representative for the other 3 years. The cleanest way to list these roles in the activity section is class representative times 3, class president times 1. This also makes it look like you worked up to being president in your final year, and that kind of arc of building towards something is a bit more impressive. Number 3, quantify your accomplishments whenever possible. So instead of saying something like, hosted a community fundraiser for a local food shelter, you could write, recruited 90 students to collect 2,500 cans of food for a local food shelter. Number 4, highlight ways that you went above the typical responsibilities of your role. If you list tutored a blind student in math, admissions officers will know that you explained concepts and helped the student with their homework. However, they might not realize that you organized a communication system for all of the students' tutors, and that's a detail worth mentioning as it shows that you are a leader, you have a penchant for efficiency, and you took a lot of initiative in this scenario. Common App essay advice is a little less straightforward to give, as each essay is pretty different in format and in content. However, here are a few of our general recommendations for the Common App essay. Number 1, you should show, don't tell. You've probably heard this in English class already, but it's vital to write an engaging essay, and it's one of the points that students struggle with most. Here's an example. Instead of saying, I struggled to make friends when I transferred schools, you can show your emotions better by writing, I scanned the bustling school cafeteria, feeling more and more forlorn with each unfamiliar face. I found an empty table and ate my lunch alone. That essay is not a report or analytical paper. It's full of emotion, and that's exactly what you want. You want to tell a story that's personal and emotional. Number 2, avoid cliches and adages. Cliches and adages like be the change you want to see in the world really rob you of an opportunity to express yourself with your own original language and thought. Furthermore, quoting famous people is something that really any applicant could do, and many will do. And the point of the essay is to share your unique, distinctive voice. Admissions officers are interested in evaluating your application to their college, not Gandhi's application. For more Common App essay advice and examples, be sure to read our detailed guide on our blog and watch our YouTube video on that subject. Both of those are linked below. Number 6, write supplemental essays. Most colleges will require school-specific essays beyond the Common App. These can range from standard topics such as why this school or why this major, to quirkier prompts like you've just invented a time machine in your living room, so where will you go? These supplemental essays are important because they allow schools to understand how you might fit with their community, which of course is a major goal of admissions officers, and they also give more insight into your specific, unique personality. For the more standard prompts such as why this school or why this major, a major tip is to cite specific opportunities that are unique to the school that you want to take advantage of. For instance, in the why school essay, it's especially important to avoid listing general aspects that could apply to many schools, such as the city it's in, location, strong programs it has, or a low student-to-faculty ratio. Here's an example of an essay response you would want to avoid. USC is a great school located in the beautiful city of Los Angeles with unparalleled academics and renowned instructors. And now, here's an example of more of the essay type you should aim for. At USC, I would join the Cosmic Writers Club to find a community of students who, like me, are passionate about the intersection of physics and creative writing. In the first example, the kind of bad example, that sentence could apply just as easily to UCLA. Without the bit about Los Angeles, the rest of the essay could really apply to any decent school in existence, strong programs, and a low student-to-faculty ratio. The second example is much better because it provides a resource that's unique to USC that the student plans to take advantage of. When it comes to the why school essay, you want to be sure not only to mention something academic, but also something extracurricular. You should remember that college is not only about classes, it's also about how you fit into the overall school community, which is often done via extracurricular activities. We've covered some of the more typical prompts, but what if you get one of those unconventional or quirky ones? Well, if you come across one of those prompts, you should feel free to show your quirky side in response. There's no need to be overly serious and pick something super intellectual that you think the admissions committee wants to hear. In fact, that's what you should avoid doing. The key to all supplemental prompts, whether serious or lighthearted, is to reveal more about who you are beyond what you wrote in your main essay and your personality. If you keep this in mind and follow the steps to tell an engaging story via these essays, they should be genuine, interesting, and distinctive and help your application. Number 7, start the financial aid process. The FAFSA opens on October 1st each year, and you'll need to fill it out to be eligible for need-based financial aid at almost all colleges. The CSS profile also opens on October 1st, and you'll likely need to fill out that one too, especially if you're applying to more selective private schools. The CCS profile has more contextual data than the FAFSA, and it's often more generous with special circumstances such as health issues or job loss in your family. Some CSS schools, which are about the top 25 schools, also offer more generous aid through the consensus formula. Some schools even use a third form, which is called the IDOC. While the CSS profile and the FAFSA take your information and then send a report to the college, the IDOC actually directly submits documentation to schools through its secure portal. Schools that use this form will say so on their financial aid website. It should be pretty clear. And you won't have to do anything until the school invites you to participate. You actually can't start the form on your own, which is different from the FAFSA and CSS profile. Financial aid deadlines vary by college and by the application timeline you're using for each application, so you should be sure to check each individual school's requirements. All of these forms are going to require a lot of documentation, such as your parents' social security numbers, their tax returns, investments, bank statements, other assets that your family owns, You may want to fill out these forms while your parents are sitting close by, so you can ask them for any documentation that comes up. Number 8, make a plan for keeping up with your college applications, schoolwork, and extracurriculars. Okay, we've made it to the last point on this checklist. As you can see, there are a lot of steps to the college applications process and many deadlines to keep track of on top of your schoolwork and extracurriculars because you're still a high school student. We strongly recommend finding a good way to stay on top of your to-dos, whether it's a physical planner, an online calendar app, or a full applications platform like ours at College Vine. Listing out the different milestones will make each step feel much more tangible, and the whole process will seem more achievable. Staying organized will also allow you to juggle college applications, school, extracurriculars, while still enjoying your final year of high school. It's really important to keep strongly in mind that you need to have fun this year, despite the busy process, because really soon you're going to be moving on to a new journey surrounded by different people, and you want to take every opportunity to enjoy your senior year. So, in conclusion, we hope this video helped you to break down the different college application steps into a handy 8-step checklist. As always, if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, you should leave them in the comments. Good luck with the fall of your senior year.